NFL season rapidly approaching. We're going to look at each division throughout the week and give our first bet for each team. So let's start off in the NFC East. If you guys don't know, we are Eagles fans, whether you like it or not. So
yeah, I love it.
Start off with that division.
I love it. I'm a huge fan of all Philadelphia teams. Thanks a lot, Phillies, when I took the kids to the Friday game against the A's, and you got beat by one of the worst teams in baseball, but neither here nor there.
You know, I don't think we should talk smack on the Phils.
You don't, do you?
No. Move on.
All right, let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles and then move to the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll play the under 9.5 wins here. Open 10.5 has been bet down for good reason. Now, a lot of people will say something like, well, they've won 12 games the last few years under Mike McCarthy. That's fantastic. This isn't last year. This isn't the year before that. Starting running back, Ezekiel Elliott. Wide receiver, depth concerns. Offensive line, more problems than we've seen in any year in probably the last decade for this O-line. All of that on the unit that's supposed to be the best unit for the Dallas Cowboys, which is the offense. Defensively, Mike Zimmer steps in at coordinator for Dan Quinn. Not really sure how that's going to go. You've got some issues on that secondary as well. Plus 10 in turnover differential last year. That was tied for 5th in the NFL. That's likely to regress. And oh, by the way, the quarterback, the star wide receiver, and the star pass rusher all want new contracts, and it looks like none of them are going to get them. With a head coach, mind you, that is in a lame duck season. I play under 9.5 here. I think there could be a complete disaster on board for the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, we kind of hope for that in ways, but I'm going to look at the Eagles. No surprise. We're going over 10.5 wins. And look, some people are salty after last season, and obviously they have a reason to be. It was 11.5. They start the season 10-1.
Yeah.
They finished the season 1-6, hit under their win total of 11.5. But of course, this is at 10.5. Now, things started to go off the rails in November, December last season, but that schedule was terrible. It was really, really difficult. But this season, they have the 6th easiest schedule. And let's just look at the division as a whole. Look, the Commanders aren't going to be that good. Neither are the Giants. They're also going to face the NFC South, which isn't an incredibly difficult division. I will say the AFC North is going to be a little bit difficult. Nonetheless, they're going to have 2 road games that are tough there with Cincinnati as well as the Baltimore Ravens. But I do think the Eagles, if you just look at them on paper, they should be able to have over 10.5 wins. And obviously, they have a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. The chemistry has to be better. And they need to stay healthy, of course, for them to be able to hit over this number. But at 10.5, if it was at 11.5, I'd probably be saying, we're getting dicey there. Maybe go with the under. But I'm going to go over 10.5.
Not a huge fan of the bye coming in week 5. If you're pro Philadelphia, you'd rather have it around 8 or 9. Get that rest midway through the season, because if it's in week 5, by the time you get to week 13, 14, some of those key games, I believe Baltimore and Pittsburgh are late in the season.
Yeah,
those are going to be physical encounters. Guys are going to get banged up. You're going to need them to be healthy. But when you're talking about 10.5 wins, based on what we saw last season, I think they can only go up from a schematic standpoint, because the players have done an excellent job of not really throwing the old coordinators under the bus. But if you talk to them about the problems, you hear a lot about communication and getting lined up properly in very subtle, polite ways. Those coordinators were a major problem. At least they brought in 2 veteran guys this year.
I mean, they might not start 10-1, but I also, like you mentioned, I think that they could be able to have at least 11.
They can grind out 11, but that's a tough start in Brazil, and then you're going to come back for a Monday night game against the Falcons.
I know, taking away a home game.
Yeah.
Tough for us.
I like him in that game. I think there's too much hype on Green Bay. I think there's an opportunity there with Philly. More to come.
Well, there's a new sheriff in town, actually in a lot of towns. 15 teams will have a new offensive coordinator heading into the NFL season, almost half the league. Let's now welcome in NFL analyst Mina Kimes. Now, like I just mentioned, 15 new offensive coordinators across the NFL is a crazy number to think about. So as bettors begin the process of evaluating player prop markets, we want to pick your brain about which ones could be most impacted by a new OC. So we'll start with Pittsburgh. A lot of turnover for the Steelers across the board. Who do you think will benefit most by the addition of Arthur Smith?
So Falcons fans burned by the usage or lack of usage of Kyle Pitts are going to be mad at me, but I think the tight end Pat Freiermuth could really benefit from the arrival of Arthur Smith, because contrary to what you saw in Atlanta at times, he really does love using tight ends. You saw that in Tennessee. This is going to be a very play-action heavy offense. I expect Freiermuth to be on the field a lot. He's a very good blocker, and I expect him to get opportunities in the pass game off of that. Hopefully with better quarterback play, particularly over the middle of the field, but better quarterback play generally than what we've seen in Pittsburgh over the last couple of years.
Well, let's also stay in the AFC, but go all the way across the country. Jim Harbaugh running things for the Chargers, and he picks Greg Roman to run the offense. Who are you looking at there?
Listen, whatever you think about Greg Roman, and Ravens fans obviously have something to say about the passing attack, this man knows how to call a rushing attack, which of course predates his time in Baltimore, goes back to San Francisco. Run games have always flourished under him. He's an incredibly creative play caller when it comes to the run game, and he brought a couple of running backs that he's familiar with, but one I'll single out here, Gus Edwards, who I do expect to be that sort of bell cow back in a Chargers offense that may lack wide receivers, but is going to be very good at running the ball. They have invested so much in this offensive line. I think Justin Herbert's going to be handing it off more than he has in recent years. And I think Edwards, who we really saw, I think, have an underrated career in Baltimore, should flourish as a result in a very good situation with a play caller who likes him a lot.
All right, let's go over to the NFC. The Bucs won the South last year, and unfortunately for me, they beat the Eagles in the playoffs. As a result, Dave Canales gets head coach job in Carolina. In comes Liam Cohen to run the offense, but unlike the other two we've talked about, much of the same personnel returns. So who stands out to you?
Yeah, so a player who I think could flourish, who was a little bit had a down year last year, is Chris Godwin. Some of this is because I think Liam Cohen, their new offensive coordinator, is going to put him back in the position that is most natural for him, and that's in the slot. He was split out wide a great deal last year. They were trying to limit his contact. He didn't flourish the way he has when he's used over the middle of the field. I also think Cohen can draw on his time with the Rams. I think about the way that they used Cooper Kupp to such great effect. I think Godwin has something of a similar skill set. So I expect him to have a bounce back year with Baker Mayfield and a new offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Mina. We look forward to chatting with you throughout this entire season. All right, Joseph, well, it's time to play Better Bet. Here are the teams Mina just mentioned and their win totals. The Steelers are at 8.5, Chargers also 8.5, the Bucs at 7.5. So of these teams, which one is the better bet to go over?
All right, Steelers are a hard pass. They have the hardest record or hardest schedule in the NFL this
Public
season.
loves them too.
Right, Public loves them. I know, Mike Tomlin. Never had a losing season, fine. But betting over 8.5 in that division with that schedule, that's a hard
I agree.
pass.
I already said under.
Especially with the quarterback issues there. Buccaneers are intriguing, like Liam Cohen as a coordinator. 11th easiest schedule in the NFL. We only need to get to 8. Division's relatively soft. The answer would be the Chargers. If I was to bet any, I have not bet the over on any of these. But if you go over 8.5, there are some issues there, yes. But go back to Jim Harbaugh's first year with the Niners. That was a 6-10 team under Singletary, I believe. And then Harbaugh steps in and wins 13 games the following season. He doesn't just win, he wins quickly. And he does have talent with the Chargers. Oh, by the way, second easiest schedule in the NFL for LA. So it's not going to surprise me if they get there. But again, I haven't bet any of these yet because just quite frankly, I don't like any of the overs. Not betting the unders, but if we're playing better bet, I think the Charger over would probably be the best price for me.
Now, the producers kind of set me up here because that was one I was going to go with, but of course they wanted me to come off you on vacation and all that jazz. But yes, like you mentioned, the Chargers.
The old producer sandbag.
Second easiest schedule. I know. I was like, which one is he going to pick? They're like, I don't know, and here we go. But nonetheless, obviously they lost some big personnel in Eckler, Allen, as well as Williams, Everett, and whatnot. But at the same time, this is a team. They had 5 wins last season. They got that injury bug. But I think Justin Herbert's going to be better this season. Also, the division isn't as competitive either, so you get some wins there. But this obviously comes down to schedule. If you have the second easiest schedule and you're seeing it at 8.5, it feels like of all those three, you got to go on the over there because you make a great point about Pittsburgh. I just don't like that, and I also like the under 8.5 that I talked about. Kind of got a lot of heat for that online. I'm not going to lie.
Steelers fans
I didn't know that
are
Steelers fans were like that. I know. I didn't know that. And then for the Bucs,
Try talking nasty about Primanti brothers. See what happens to you there.
Yeah.
Were you even close on the Bucs at all? Schedule looks pretty good. It's only 7.5. Mayfield's back at quarterback. He's got weapons in Evans and Godwin. Yeah. Defense is decent. 7.5 looked like an alarm because to me that felt light. And then you dig into it and you think to yourself, maybe the team's headed for some regression there.
Yeah, because I feel like last year they surprised us in ways. Obviously beat our Eagles in the playoffs, which I will never let anybody live down. But yeah, it does feel a little bit low there.
Chargers, keep in mind, 3-8 in one-score games last season. 3-8. That is a big flashing light that team's going to turn it around. Harbaugh coaching late in the fourth quarter versus what they had last year. They're gonna win some games. They're gonna surprise some people in a few games.
Let's get back to the NFL. The Packers and Jordan Love may be nearing an agreement on a contract extension, but until it's done, the starting quarterback won't participate in practice or any games this preseason. Meanwhile, Bengals coach Zach Taylor says that Joe Burrow has been cleared for contact at the start of camp. Burrow had season-ending wrist surgery in December last season. Now, his teammate, Jamar Chase, has been seeking a contract extension, but Bengals team president said a deal getting done is not imminent for the wide receiver. So let's get back to our series of first bet that we're going to do. We're going to look at the AFC East now. We did the NFC East earlier in the show. I'll let you have the floor. What's your first bet there?
So we can do anything here, right? Division, season win total.
Division, I'm pretty sure player props if you want, whatever you want.
Let's go player prop. Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, Miami Dolphins, under on the passing yards, which is 4,005. Tua is coming off a career year in terms of passing yards. He's coming off a career year in terms of games played. What do I always say about guys coming off career years or career games?
What do you say, Joe? They're going to go under.
Exactly. You always bet against them. Always bet against the guy off the career game. Always bet against the guy off the career year. Not always going to win, but it's a good spot. Why? Numbers are inflated. Tua's never played more than 13 games in a season outside of last year. Had never thrown for more than 3,500 yards outside of last year. Those are two big games, two big numbers, a lot of big production. But this year, that offensive line, not in the top half of the NFL in terms of rankings, basically anywhere you look. There's some problems there. We know about the injury history. I'd be looking to play the under here.
You know, you'd be really funny as an exec. You'd like pull in a player and be like, you played well last year. I'm fading you all year. I know exactly what's coming up for you. In terms of the AFC
would go over very well, I'm sure.
Very well. Very PC of you. I'm looking at the Jets to go over 9.5 wins this upcoming season.
All right.
Last year, they had 7 wins, but obviously Aaron Rodgers, he went down game 1. So now with him returning to the lineup, the offense is really good, and also the defense is really stout. Last season, they were great, okay? They ranked 3rd in total yards allowed per game, 2nd in passing yards allowed per game, and they're all coming back. So this team, on paper, is looking great. And then as for that schedule, they have the 9th easiest schedule this upcoming season. So just knowing that they're really good, knowing the division I don't think is actually as competitive as it was last year, knowing that Aaron Rodgers is slating in there, I'm looking at the Jets over 9.5 wins.
I like it. I'm with you on that. That first game of the season is going to be fantastic. Monday Night Football in Santa Clara against the Niners. They're catching 5.5. Salah goes back to take on Kyle Shanahan.
6.5. It's already moved.
It's 6.5?
No, it was. And then it
was 6.5 down to 5.5?
5.5.
Good. Let's take the points in that matchup. Remember, Salah, for any of the jokes you want to say about the head coach, he was the defensive coordinator in Santa Clara under Kyle Shanahan. He understands how Shanahan operates. He understands how he calls plays. If there's a guy who at least has the thought of how they're going to attack him, he's one of them.
I don't know. Maybe we'll go Jets money line. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I'm like,
That's aggressive. Think
it?
about Greenberg on Tuesday if the Jets win that game.
No, we got to go for the aggressive.